All right, everybody, welcome to another, what do we call these? Moments,
Workshop,
experiences,
coaching
workshops,
session.
another session of the Extraordinary Family Life Formula Group Coaching. Love you guys. Thanks for being a part of this and part of our community. And if you're here, we're so glad when you guys can make it and be here with us to chime in and share and ask questions. And if you're watching the recording, I know a lot of you can't always make the sessions because it doesn't work with your schedule, but we're grateful you're watching the recordings. We're grateful for you that you're here and part of this community and still with us. Today's topic is huge, and super sensitive. It's one of those topics. So I'll just throw it out. We're talking about overcoming or transcending or growing out of anxiety and depression, right? And those have become kind of keywords and even trigger words for some people. It's become very popular to talk about, and it's become more open, which is really good for a lot of people who kind of kept it hidden or closed off or kind of hid away. They felt some shame around it, or they kept it buried. They didn't reach out for help and talk to people and let people know they were struggling, and they didn't reach out for help, which is a super tragedy. That's a super tragedy. But then there's another side of it too, where talking about it so much has made it even more common for people, and a lot of people have just jumped on this train because they either don't understand it, or they're starving for attention, or they're just not managing some things well, so they jump on too, and then it's just become a massive problem. And so as a society, it's something we're all really struggling with. But like I was saying, it's super sensitive, right? There's certain topics that
Can be.
it can be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be, but it can be. And I hope we can have just this totally open, transparent, honest conversation today and discuss ideas and practices. We have little people knocking at the door. But it's, topics that can be super sensitive are like money and religion and politics and food and weight loss and sex, and like there's some of those things that'll just, boy, it's, some of us have such a hard time discussing some of these topics, and they're just very what's the word, they're very charged, right? I like that idea. It's just really a charged topic. So we're going to share some things, and we have to say right out the gates here, we are not doctors, we are not psychologists, we are not psychiatrists, we are not any ists, like we said on our podcast, except enthusiasts. And we love studying this stuff, and we have personal experience with it, we have family experience with it in our extended family, and we've been working with people for almost 30 years, across 5 continents. So we've had a lot of experience. We've done a ton of deep studying around psychology and life practices, and so we have some things that just work that we want to share. Now, like with everything, there's tons of facets, right? So like this isn't like it's just a one size fits all, and there's lots of facets and lots of pieces of a big puzzle. And so we're going to try to talk about several pieces, but it's a lot of complexity, right? Being a human being is complex. You guys know this? Like there's a lot to a human. There's a lot to you. And interestingly, there's literally more complexity with women than there is with men. You kind of know that, right? But when Rachel and I went to get our blood panels done, this was what, a couple of years ago.
It was right before. No, it was right after COVID or something.
Oh, we were on our trip, yeah. So
right before
a couple of years ago, we went and got our blood. So maybe it was like just a year ago, year and a half maybe. And we went and got our blood panels done because we're like, well, let's look at everything. Let's look at testosterone levels, estrogen levels. Let's look at cholesterol levels. Let's just have any vitamin deficiencies. So you just go get a blood panel done just to see where your body's at. And actually, at some point, I would recommend that for everybody, because you get like this inside look at how all the inner workings are going on. Mm-hmm. And it might pop up like, oh man, you're super low on iron or vitamin A or vitamin D. And that, like those little things right there can be huge indicators to anything that's going on. And even particularly with today's topic of
Mhm.
anxiety and depression, those often come up if there's missing pieces, right? And if
Missing nutrients.
yeah, missing nutrients, if something's off, it's going to be like, and they'll tell you like, whoa, no wonder. I mean, people who know what they're doing, they'll be like, well, no wonder, man. Like, are you, and they'll ask you things like, wow, are you tired all the time? Are you really fatigued a lot? Because you're super low, your blood panel is showing super low in this vitamin or this nutrient. And you'll be like, yeah, I'm exhausted all the time. I was wondering what it is. Like, oh yeah, well, you're not getting enough of this or that, or something's off. Those are huge. But the complexity piece was, they came to me and they said, okay, Greg, you'll have all your results tomorrow. Rachel, it'll probably be about a week. And I'm like, hey, what the heck, man? What gives?
Discrimination.
Yeah, discrimination. I want it tomorrow. And they're like, oh, no. They're like, the female blood panel is so complex. Like, here's a man, it's like this, and this, and like, we'll have that tomorrow. But a woman's body has so much going on. They're like, there's so much in there to read through and work through and analyze all this stuff. So it just takes a lot longer because it's so complex. And I was like, oh yeah. Right. It's just another like, oh yeah, like there's an indication, like there are very, very significant differences in the workings. And as much as we want to be the same, like, sorry, man, you can't play that game. Like, no, we're just the same. Like, no, we're not. Just go get some blood work done. You'll be like, no, we're not the same. Right? We're not the same, people. So there's all kinds of functionings and things going on. So as we're looking at all these complexities, there are formulas, right? There are things we do that help us feel better and operate better. And there are things we do that help us feel worse and operate worse, right? We know this. In fact, I mean, just throw some things in the chat box, even. Just throw some in the chat box. You've experienced this. What are some examples of things you've done, and when you do them, you feel better, and things go better, and things you've done that when you do them or don't do them, things go worse, and you feel worse? I mean, it's such a simple, complex or concept, but I think sometimes we overcomplicate it. And
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, I've been waiting for a chance to say
Go.
something. I just kind of want to throw this in about, because we recently did a podcast episode about it, and then we wanted to talk about it today too, because very specifically, I think one thing that instigated it was Greg's brother, who's he geeks out on all things health and wellness and all of these things. And he sent Greg a link to an article talking about recent research that pretty much, you read it, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase and correct me if I'm wrong, pretty much was saying, oh, hey, guess what? Depression is not caused by chemical imbalances like people have thought. It's actually caused by
Habit, essentially.
exactly habit. I was trying to look for the right word. I didn't want to put words in the mouth of the article, but habits, behaviors, it's basically caused by things you are doing or not doing. Now,
which is really good news. That's
right,
super
that's
good
really
news.
Great news.
It puts the power back in our hands.
Now, for Greg, that was super exciting because that's something you've believed for decades.
Yeah.
And have taught for decades. But here now was this piece of scientific evidence, and there's more and more that's already come out and is coming out saying, yeah, it's not a chemical imbalance like people have believed for years. It can't necessarily be fixed by medication. In fact, here's the study showing that, and we're going to get into this, what actually works. And so when you got that, it was like, yes, we were excited because we're like, here it is.
Boom.
This is what we've been teaching and believing for years. And now here is the actual evidence saying, yep, that's the case. So that is kind of why it's on our minds right now. And we've wanted to talk about it because while we have been teaching that for years, we wanted to just be like, hey, here it is. Here's what actually works. Here's the misconceptions that are being fixed and corrected in the scientific community. And here's what we can do about it. The things that are actually proven to change, to to change the condition and to help people overcome these diseases that are actually more, it's not even a disease necessarily, it's
It's a consequence.
the consequence
Or a
of
symptom.
actions.
Yeah.
Yes, and
It's a
thinking
it's a
patterns.
symptom of thinking patterns, thinking habits, and life habits more than anything else. And that's really, really good news for all of us.
Yes.
Because if you, and it's such a common misbelief in the United States that, well, I can't help it. I have chemical imbalances. There's nothing I can do about it. I am a victim. I can't, all this stuff you talk about won't help me because my body's off. If that were true, that's a sad state, because you're like, well, there's nothing you can do.
You literally are a victim at that point. There is nothing you can do.
But the truth they're finding is like, no, the people who have something really off in their bodies that they can't, like, it's really off, and it is some kind of misalignment in the body or misfunction, that percentage is so small. I think
like
less than
2%?
3%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something less than 3% of people have, like, there's something, okay, there's a real problem. The rest of us, the good news is, like, we can just alter our habits and patterns, our thinking patterns, our actions, our behaviors, the systems we're using. We can create those transformations and get massive improvements. It doesn't mean it'll happen tomorrow, although there are things you could do today to totally pivot and start getting
Change
results
direction.
immediately. Yeah. And, it might not be a full recovery, in a short time, but man, drastic improvements starting right away.
Well,
which is
and
really,
which
really
we're going
cool.
to talk about, because you're going to talk about some specific research. But part of the reason why Greg in the beginning was talking about that it can be a sensitive subject, because as you have talked about these things over the years, you have had people confront you in a way, or
directly
get very defensive often about this, saying the things you've just said, like, there's nothing I can do, it's a chemical imbalance, I'm essentially a victim, I'm powerless. And you've always, well, I would definitely say there's been times when you've looked into that, you've considered if that's truly
Absolutely.
the case, and
Absolutely.
the more you have studied it, the more you have realized that that's not the case. And especially now with this even more recent research, it's becoming scientifically clear that no, that is not the case. That's only what people have been led to believe by the the scientific community at the time, or the
but
social conditioning.
It was the social conditioning and the masses and the spreading it, and with social media, it even spread further. People are spreading all these ideas. And it's amazing to me that people will latch on to ideas they just hear from random people. It's like, oh, I heard this or saw this post or this meme or whatever. Oh, yeah. And it spreads like wildfire, and they hold on to it. That's their belief. That's their religion. I mean, they set up a religion around these ideas. And particularly, we're drawn to something that, it's really ironic. We're drawn to things that make it powerless, because we don't want it to be our responsibility. We don't want accountability, because that's heavy. Right. And so you're like, anyone that I can blame, or any situation or circumstance, if I can put it out of my control, at least I don't feel responsible.
Well, and that makes sense. It's human nature in a lot of ways, because like you were saying, it's very heavy to take on the responsibility, to be able to say, I am contributing to this. That's a hard thing to do, no matter what it is in our life. Any negative situation we're facing, it's hard to say, I contributed to this. Now, one of the most powerful examples of this in my mind is Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I always forget how to say his name exactly.
Who knows?
Solzhenitsyn. Is that close?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't speak Russian. Might not even be Alexander.
Who knows? Okay. Anyways, he wrote the Gulag Archipelago. I still always mess that up.
Archipelago.
Why do I archipelago? Anyways, he wrote the Archipelago, and I haven't even read it, but you've told me about it, and it's amazing. Okay. And what you told me was,
this is fun.
He's in the Gulag, which is a Russian concentration camp, essentially. Except the difference between Nazi concentration camps and Russian concentration camps was that the Germans were persecuting the Jews. Well, in Russia, it didn't matter. Anyone got thrown in there. Just because you wanted their wife or you wanted their property or you wanted their cow and you had more, you were in the army or you had a position of power. And so you could send someone to the gulag and then they spent the rest of their life there pretty much.
All you have to do is accuse somebody of treachery or treason
Exactly,
or like, oh,
right.
no, I think they're a spy. And poof, off they go. Labor camps and death and torture.
So Alexander is in this gulag and suffering. The stories you've told me about the things that happen in there are horrendous. And he's sitting there and he thinks eventually at some point
he actually gets cancer and he's dying. He's in the gulag. He's been there for years. He's suffered so much. He survives. He gets super, super sick. And he's laying on his deathbed, like in and out of consciousness, literally dying in this camp. And then he has this experience.
And he basically thinks to himself, how did I contribute to this situation? What part did I play to me ending up in this gulag? How did I make this happen? That right there is the ultimate individual responsibility. And his entire premise of his book, The Gulag, basically states that it is individual responsibility which keeps us free, for one thing, and prevents the destruction of society. So in something like that, this very extreme circumstances, and he thinks through and he thinks through all these circumstances and situations where he wasn't fully honest with himself and he wasn't truthful and he wasn't taking responsibility and he wasn't courageous and he didn't stand up for what was right. All of these things that he could have done but didn't do or did do that were wrong, he said that contributed to the entire breakdown of society and to me ending up in the gulag. Now that's huge, right? But in a very similar way, I think, especially with everything in our lives, but especially with something like depression and anxiety, we have to be able to look at ourselves and accept individual responsibility of how we have contributed to the gulag that we are in. And it's hard. Like, it's hard to say, yeah, it's my fault I'm in the gulag. And yet, if we don't do that,
we give away our own power.
Yeah. We give away our power. And even worse, as his whole premise of his book is that if we don't do that, we are on a path to communism, fascism, authoritarianism, totalitarianism. That's the path we're on, because each person is not taking individual responsibility. Now that's the bigger picture there, right? That's the really big picture. But in our personal lives, by taking individual responsibility, that is how we gain the power to change our lives. And the science now is backing that up. It's showing that that is the case. It's our individual choices, our individual habits, our individual actions that are contributing to depression and anxiety.
Boom! Yeah, this is exciting, right? And so the exciting part is
it's exciting, it's terrifying,
right?
It's overwhelming.
It's all of it.
It's freeing.
It's saddening sometimes or discouraging, but I think it's exciting and there's good news there, because you're like, wait a minute, if I am contributing to this, then I can uncontribute to it, or I can turn around and I can contribute to the change, right? There's things I can start doing immediately to start feeling better, right? And oh man, that's such good news, right? Okay, so let's take this example that Baleen wrote in here. She said, I ate a couple of pieces of pizza for lunch yesterday and felt so full and bloated that I didn't eat dinner and wasn't hungry. I just felt big and slow. That's a perfect, simple example we have all experienced. we eat way too much, or like Thanksgiving, right? You think of Thanksgiving, you're just like afterwards, like, whoa. You're like, why do I feel like a whale? It's like, well, I just, I just came from the table where I ate like a whale, right? I feel like going into hibernation because I ate like a bear. And that's so true. But then how many of you felt the effect of certain kinds of foods? As soon as you take a few bites, you're like, ooh, it either gives you a stomach ache or a headache, or you just feel blah, right? I can remember times I don't touch any of that junk anymore at all. But I remember times where I drink something or eat something and immediately like, oh man. One distinct time when Rachel and I got married, I was like, babe, we're not eating junk food. We're not eating ice cream. Like, it's no go. And she was like, okay. Right. You guys know this story. We've told this story a lot of times where she wanted to put an ice cream scoop on our wedding registry, right? So somebody would buy us an ice cream scoop. And I was like, we don't need that. And she's like, well, yeah, I can't do the ice cream with the
I can't
regular
scoop ice
spoon.
cream with a spoon.
I'm like, babe, no, we're
We-
not gonna eat ice
We
cream.
don't need an ice cream scoop. And I was like, ooh, right. We're not going to eat ice cream.
So then we'd been married. I can't remember how long we've been married, but her family, ironically, always went out for ice cream
Well,
to celebrate
this is part of the irony. My dad died from cancer, but then every
from,
year,
and his oncologist said it was because of poor eating habits.
diet. And then every year, though, my family would want to, on his birthday, they would want to go out and have ice cream. Well, we
The irony just kills me. But
don't do that now, but I think it was probably the first year we went.
and I was like, I want to be supportive of my wife who lost her dad. And she's like,
Mhm.
let's go. I'm like, babe, this is like the reason he died was because he ate so poorly for so long. And like, let's go. It'll be nostalgic and this, that, and the other. And when you guys, when I was before I got my health thing at like 16, 17, I could sit down by myself and eat a half gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream and drink 2 liters of Dr. Pepper, right? I was on the far camp of like, yeah, that's a full meal right there. Oh, right. So I was like, you know what? I'll get a scoop of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Just to be supportive of the family here, my new bride. Oh man, I took a bite and immediately, like my body, I was in such a clean state. Like I was just, I had just cleansed. What's that? Yeah, cleanse. Detox. I had detoxed my whole body from sugars and junk and garbage. Like it was back to a good state. I took a bite of that, one bite, and I could feel I got a headache right away. I felt sick. I'm like, holy cow, this stuff. I'm like, sorry, babe. No, I'm back. I'm back to my conviction.
I probably finished the ice cream thing.
It is. But that's just a good example, right? And so actually, let's lead in right there. Let's lead in. Let's go with the body.
Well, because we're gonna, after that introduction and premise, we're basically gonna go through the things that they're saying directly contribute to depression, or what's the opposite of depression? Happiness.
Just an optimized good state.
Yes.
Yeah, it's well-being, right? It's
Right.
just
I
great
like
well-being.
Well-being.
That you're kind of you just operate. So it's like your general operating state, right? It can be super high, like mine. My general operating state's like really high, but it's not because I'm lucky. It's not because I was born to a family of Energizer bunnies. I wasn't. I was actually born like opposite.
Off camera.
Way off camera. But I worked myself up in habit. It's habits, right? So I operate here. And then others, like, they just operate in a general sense of well-being. Like most of the time they feel just good. It's great.
It's like think of like a thermostat. I think as we're growing up, our family culture sets this thermostat of like just where you operate. It could just, maybe it's low. Most people, it's not very high, but some people are, just kind of in the middle. And that's the thermostat. That's where you operate. And unless we're intentional about changing that thermostat once we become adults, we kind of just stay there. Maybe we'll adjust somewhat from where our parents were and be like, oh, I'm going to go up here a little bit, or maybe I'm going to go down here because they were too, whatever. That's where we are. Now, what happens with anxiety and depression is through our habits and our thinking patterns, we lower that thermostat. and we keep lowering it and we keep lowering it until that becomes then the new normal. And it feels difficult to overcome that inertia because we're trying to change the temperature without changing the thermostat, if that makes sense.
Yes,
We're trying to
spot
do
on.
stuff to cool it down. Maybe we're turning on a fan, but the heater's running, right? Or vice versa. And so unless we change the thermostat, we're not actually going to make permanent changes in the temperature.
And you make all these attempts, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's not working. It's not working. None of this stuff works. All this crap you guys just told us, that's a bunch of garbage. It's not working. And it's true. I think it's a really great comparison there. You're trying to change the temperature without changing the thermostat. And so what we're going to do is like these practices that all of us can do to start raising the temperature and getting back to a new normal. Now, what's interesting is that the survival brain, the way the brain works, and survival brain especially, it wants to stick with what's familiar. It doesn't even care if it works or not, right? The survival brain will stay in self-sabotage as long as it's familiar. It's what it's used to. Isn't that crazy? It's crazy. So like if that's what's familiar, if that's where the setting is, and you're like, no, we're changing things around here. We're gonna raise the setting. We're gonna reset that thermostat. The survival brain for a while is gonna be like, this is new. This is crazy. What are you doing? We're so used to this. This is what we know. This is what's familiar to us. This is where we're quote comfortable, even though you can be really, really miserable in your comfortable state and really comfortable in your misery because it's familiar. And so we're gonna walk out of that and create a new setting that like, oh no, this is where we're gonna operate now, a new level of operation. So let's start with body. And again, you guys, this is so comprehensive. There are wonderful, wonderful books written about all this, and we highly recommend you read them. And we can go on and on. We're just going to scratch the surface today. Yeah, and we need to get into an uncomfortable comfort zone, or what I like to say, get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Where your survival brain's like, oh man, this is all new and like unknown, and there's so much uncertainty, and you're like, yep, settle in right here, buddy, because we're going to live in uncertainty, because we're going to live an adventurous life, and we're going to try novelty, and we're going to keep introducing new things. We're going to take on risks because it makes us feel alive. It makes us feel alive. So we'll dive in.
Which is the opposite of being depressed.
Yep, exactly. So the most simple form is like, what's happening in your body? And we kind of touched on that a while ago, but like you just have to look at like this, your body is your vehicle. It's your vehicle for everything that's going on. So, and we'll do body brain specifically, like the actual brain, the parts and pieces of the brain. We'll talk about the mind, and the mind's more like psychology, but the condition of the body and the brain.
So like biochemistry,
Yep.
physiology, like what's happening on a cellular level, a chemical level, because are you going to talk about the proteins and the
Yeah.
So, okay.
That's next level awesomeness. Let's start. We'll get into the complexities of all the awesomeness of our bodies, but let's just start really simple, which we already did kind of. Like, have you eaten any foods? This is so simple. Have you eaten foods and you felt the food affect how you feel? You with me? Who's had this experience? Who's with me on this? You've eaten something and it affects the way you feel. Like, oh man, that feels like fresh. It feels renewing. It feels like I can tell I've gotten energy from food being fuel, versus you eat something and you're like, ugh, man, I feel bleh, right? Even Baylene's comment about, after that you feel full and bloated, and then you don't want to eat, and you feel big and slow. Isn't that interesting? So you start feeling, and what if we were doing that consistently, where we're just feeling slow and kind of lethargic? Man, that can happen all the time. Now, what's really interesting is our bodies will respond differently to certain kinds of foods. Right? Our bodies will respond to certain kinds of foods. And what's really interesting about this is it takes a lot of awareness. It takes a lot of practice, because again, the survival brain and the survival mechanisms in us will always get used to whatever has. So if you've just been eating a certain way, your body just adapts. It's so incredible. The body just adapts to anything. And if you've just been eating this way and your body just adapts, that's why people are like, they're like, no, I eat fast food every day. I don't notice anything. This doesn't affect me. We go out and they're like, that's another burger, another fry, I stop at the gas station and just pound huge things of soda. And they're like, no, this isn't affecting me. It's like your body is adapted to that, even though it's literally dying because of it. But
or at the very least, you can be a little dramatic sometimes.
No, it's slow death.
I know.
No, it literally is killing you. This isn't drama, and this isn't my opinion. There is ample science that those things are literally killing you at a cellular level.
Because it's killing your cells.
Yeah, it's killing your cells.
Okay. But
Which is
also it's putting a big strain on
all your systems.
All of your systems, exactly. It's kind of like if you put the wrong fuel in your car, like it's just not functioning quite as well.
Yep. So we have the motor or the pump, and you get the pump going to affect that system. So you have the nervous system, you have the blood, all the blood system, the vascular system, you have the skin is a whole system organ, you have the muscular, the skeletal, just all your bones. I mean, you got all kinds of systems operating all the time, right? And every one of them gets affected. So what they found more and more and more, like there's new research coming out every single day, which is so cool. As the technology grows and the science grows, they're seeing all this like clear evidence of this stuff. And it's so fascinating. What a wonderful time to be alive. Isn't it so cool? Like they have the technology now to take pictures of your brain while you're thinking and show it to you and be like, oh, look what your brain's doing while you're thinking of this. Oh, now think of this, or now move this, and now do this, and watch what your brain happens. You know, watch your brain in real time. Like, how cool is that? And they can watch the flow. They can put a little dye in your body, and then they can watch it. They can track the whole thing as it flows through your whole body, all the way down and back. And then they're like, oh, it's stopping right there. You got some kind of blockage. It's not working. Right? So the more it comes out, the better. They're finding there's certain foods are triggering certain reactions in people. Right? There are, and I want to emphasize, I don't know how to emphasize this enough. Certain foods will trigger very specific feelings, thoughts, and reactions, behaviors in individuals and people.
So I've actually started paying more attention to this in myself. And it's interesting that, because I'm always experimenting with different types of like diets or ways of eating or something, just because I'm passionate about that. But I've noticed sometimes that because we work on having a positive state, like staying in a more positive state as often as we can. And I've noticed sometimes that I will find myself suddenly being like off or feeling grumpy or depressed or angry. And sometimes it's directly connected to something I've eaten.
Or,
it's like
or being hungry.
Well, that too. Yeah. Being hungry, yeah. But I'll have eaten something. Maybe I ate sugar, or I try not to eat a lot of seed oils, so things with vegetable oils. And I'll notice that afterwards my mood will be like I'm more irritable, or I'm more angry and upset about things. And the kids will be doing something. I'm like, ah, so irritated. Why? But I've started to notice this connection between the food I'm eating, because I generally eat it when I'm out, right? We don't have that in our house. And so when I go out and I have that food and then I come back and I'm like, why am I so off? And I've started to notice this direct connection between the food I've been eating. So point being with this is that when we are looking at these things we can do to overcome anxiety and depression, one of the first places we always love to look is at food, because food is fuel and it makes a huge difference. And if you're putting the wrong type of fuel into your body, it's going to have a direct effect on not just your body itself, like the physical state, but the biochemistry. And the biochemistry is what produces your feelings, because your body is a pharmacy. and it is constantly producing chemicals. It's producing cortisol or dopamine or melatonin or serotonin
or endorphins,
and,
all this stuff.
and what you're eating, besides the fact of how you're moving, which that's the next thing, is contributing to what chemicals are being produced. And so if you're eating things that are producing more cortisol, well then, yeah, you're going to feel more depressed or more anxious because those are the chemicals that produce those feelings.
So specifics, they're finding correlation or causation with sugar, especially. Sugar is an inflammatory, so refined sugar just goes and causes inflammation at a cellular level. So direct. Oh, actually, I was going to share this, what Rich was saying. The brain is only 3% of the body mass, but it consumes 20% of what we eat, or uses 20% of what we consume. Think about that for a second. The brain is only 3% of your body mass, but it takes 20% of what we put in our mouths. It consumes it. And what if we're operating on Dr. Pepper or Mountain Dew and like...
Wait, Mountain Dew or Dr. Pepper?
Both. Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, and Ding Dongs. Or what do they call those one? Who's our friend that stopped for those?
Ho-hos?
It's like some that I'm like, what is that even? He's like, oh, I used to stop and eat those. Like, oh man, if you're living on gas station food, again, I'm being extreme here, but a lot of us are regularly eating just garbage.
Well, I think it's also significant that not only does it use 20% of the fuel we eat, it also thrives off of fats. And a lot of us aren't getting enough fats.
Which case,
especially because the old, outdated, very wrong scientific research from a decade or two ago was that
it was like 4 decades ago.
Fats were bad for you. And you needed to go low fat. And that is now like blatantly wrong. Like, no, sorry, oops, that was a big mistake. Your body needs fat.
And I'm glad you brought that one up, because that's a specific one. They found that low fat diets induce depression. Let that sink in. This is huge. Low fat diets induce depression. Why? Because the brain needs lots of healthy fats. And if it doesn't have it, it's almost like it's emaciated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not functioning like it could. And so low fat diets often can induce depression.
So one of the very first things I do when I wake up in the morning is I boil some water, and then I either drink it with just honey and butter and
grass-fed butter.
Grass-fed butter and grass-fed milk, or half and half. Or I make like mint tea or dandelion tea or some other type of tea, and I drink it that way with the butter and milk and honey. Because you're getting fats. I'm giving my brain fats first thing in the morning, especially because I want to do something in the morning, like write or read or do something intelligent, right? And so when I wake up and I give my body fats right in the morning, it's ready to go.
So that's a huge one. So look at sugars, look at
fats,
seed oils, how many good fats you're getting. Look at chemicals. Please make it a way of being and a new lifestyle that you read the ingredients on everything, literally everything. Before it goes in your mouth, you look at the ingredients. And if you see this list of crazy chemicals and food coloring and stuff, that does not, like red 40 does not grow on a tree anywhere. That is not a natural substance, you guys. There's so many chemicals. And you might be like, okay, you guys are being a little bit extreme here. You're kind of being a little crazy. Just chillax it. Like, look at all the people eating this stuff. And we're like, yeah. Do you know how many like physical and psychological health problems it's all causing? Look around. Massive numbers. That's the greatest. Well, and Daniel Amen, he's a doctor on the brain doctor. He says the greatest weapon of mass destruction is the American diet. I mean, it's literally killing millions of people.
I'm kind of laughing here because I feel like we're really holding back. Honestly, we are, because we could go off on a lot of stuff. But I do just want to mention really fast, because one of the very first things that we cut out years ago was high fructose corn syrup. I started reading every label, and anything that had high fructose corn syrup or any kind of corn syrup in it,
and MSG,
or pretty much any type of corn, anything, I completely cut out of our diet. That's where I started. So in a way, you start with baby steps. You pick something and be like, I'm done buying anything that has high fructose corn syrup in it. Done. Another thing I would highly recommend, because this research on this is just so clear now, is what we're calling seed oils, which most people call vegetable oils, but they're not vegetables. There's nothing vegetable about them. They're seeds. And so seed oils are very, very toxic. In fact, there was a direct connection between COVID deaths and seed oil consumption.
Like canola oil.
Basically, it's canola oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil.
They found
anything that's not olive oil or coconut oil is basically a seed oil, and it's extremely toxic and terrible for you.
And they found that the people who consumed a lot of those oils were far, far, far more likely to have severe,
well, first of all,
symptoms of COVID or death.
They're also, well, first of all, part of the reason is they're far more likely to have obesity and heart disease, which then of course contributes to COVID death. So there was this direct correlation between seed oil consumption and COVID death. And unfortunately, that's what's everything in McDonald's and every other fast food restaurant is being fried in, is seed oils. So Bailey says, you don't have to hold back. We can handle it. Yes, don't hold back.
And,
oh, wait.
And Tasha and Bailey. Okay. So no holding back. We're gonna deliver the goods straight out of the pan here. So basically we're saying, like, and I, again, what's interesting about this, you guys, this isn't our opinion. It's now our belief, because we've gone out and done the research, and now we're like, oh, okay, there it is. Like, we get this.
Well, so, and I want to, what's the word? I want to emphasize that in a way, because 10 or 15 years ago, we thought this was our opinion.
Right.
We were thinking these types of things, but we're like, that's our opinion, And now,
and this is like, I started when I was 17. You guys know some of my story. At 17, I cut out soda, sugar, desserts, ice cream, all of the stuff I grew up on. I cut it all out, like cold turkey, gone. None of that stuff. And it wasn't like from tons of research. I was like, this can't be good for you. So I cut it all out. And now
you were motivated by weightlifting.
Yeah,
that was
fitness.
Your thing at the time.
Fitness. I want to be in phenomenal shape and health. So I'm like, this can't be good.
Which,
it was just
wait,
common sense.
I want to make this connection there, though, because this is important. Because at the time, you were a struggling teenager who was depressed, and his family life was a mess. He had moved out. He was on his own, and exercise became your lifeline. It became how you stayed sane, which then prevented you from further depression and, potentially worse.
And substance abuse.
Yes, prevented substance abuse. And then led to the diet changes, which then helped and contributed to everything else in your life. Like,
so without knowing it, I literally put myself on the best therapeutic plan for raising the setting way above where my family setting was, by exercising vigorously and eating really well. Like, just those two things totally transformed my whole trajectory in life. Right? Oh, it's like super cool. So we've got to clear out the crap. And you guys, my invitation is, go cold turkey. Just throw it away. If there's trash in your house, first of all, who in the world brought trash into your house? Like, what are you doing? When my kids, like, when they eat candy or something, I'm like, you guys, what don't you like about your life? Why would you do this? What's wrong? Right? And I'm being a little facetious and playful, but I'm also being serious. I'm like, wait a minute. some people are literally committing suicide one bite at a time. It's just a long, drawn out suicide. And it's just terrible health on the way. And what's interesting, people are like, oh no, I've smoked a cigarette every day and I drink all the time and I eat that crap and look at me, I'm fine. I'm like, oh man, but if you didn't have that garbage in your system, do you know what kind of health you could enjoy? Do you know where you could be? Because it's just tanking the whole thing.
Okay, but connected to this is, of course, a great question. My big question is, what are the good foods to eat? The list of no foods is long. What foods are fuel? Excellent question. And
and debatable.
And a challenging question because, as you know from my story, my dad was diagnosed with cancer essentially the same week we met.
Yep.
He was given 3 to 6 months to live. At the time, he came across some alternative stuff, which prolonged his life, and he ended up living 2.5 years. But the whole experience with him, your experience as a teen and then that experience with him for me put us on this path of pursuing health and wellness. And since that time, I've pretty much read almost every book you can think of about health and diet. I've read books that said milk are terrible and poison. Literally, I think there's a book called Milk is Poison I read. And then books, of course, that say it's amazing for you and it's like a superfood. I've read books about being raw and vegetarian, vegan. I've read books about being a carnivore. I've read every kind of book you can think.
And we've tried it. We've experimented
with many of them. And so I would say that ultimately there are some common denominators that I've found. And this includes research that looks at indigenous peoples and our ancestors, like what kind of diets our ancestors ate, and then what kind of diets indigenous people eat. And it also is directly connected to dental health, because actually your dental health is a indicator of the overall health of your body. In fact,
same with your gut health. Those are two separate systems that are giving you clear signs of like what's going on in your body. What's going on in your mouth and what's going on in your gut are massive indications of what's happening overall in your body.
Yes, exactly. And so if you have poor dental health, it's also likely that you have poor health in some other area, either heart or diabetes, things like that. In fact, there's some dentists, of course not mainstream dentists, they can't do this, but some dentists can tell what other diseases you have in your body based off of your dental health. So, but there was a man named Weston Price, and he studied, this was back in the 30s, he studied indigenous peoples around the world and looked at their diets and looked at their dental health, and then he found the common denominators. So as I have studied this for, 2 decades now, I've found common denominators of what the actual good foods are and what is actually fuel for your body. Now, of course, there's still a lot of controversy about this. There's still plenty of people that think, no, that's not right. You need to be eating, whatever their thing is that they think you need to eat. And I understand why that can be confusing and why there's plenty of those misconceptions still going on. And I don't think we have 100% of the answers. It's just 80% here. We're focusing on 80-20 rule here. So,
and I think it's worth pointing out here, there are body types. There are different body types.
Yes, I definitely think that comes into play. This is one interesting side note that correlates with that idea. Our oldest daughter is adopted. She's African-American. She's the African-American race. From the time she has been small, she has craved meat like nobody's business. Like that girl needs meat. And if she doesn't get enough meat, she's anxious and depressed. So I can often tell if her diet's, she's moved out now, and I can tell if she's struggling, or I can tell that she hasn't been eating enough meat when she's struggling, when she's feeling anxious and worried and depressed about things. Like, oh, have you been eating enough meat? So she needs meat. Now, I also have come to believe that all of us need meat. In fact, red meat is one of the only foods, if not the only food in the world, that people do not have an allergy to. You can have an allergy to a food allergy to pretty much any other food on earth except for red meat. So I think all people need red meat. Now,
It has to be
it
grass
should be
fed, though.
ideally grass-fed or at least organic.
And if you have family that goes out hunting for elk and moose and deer and wild animals, like, oh, that's the perfect grass-fed natural meat. That's good stuff.
That's good stuff. But there is this body type thing that to take into consideration. The other thing that is the common denominator in indigenous diets, as well as healthy dental teeth diet, that doesn't make sense, but diets that produce healthy dental
Health.
healthy dental health. Yeah, I'm like, that's not making sense. Anyways, the common denominator always most often includes some sort of milk. And I'm not talking about almond milk because you can't milk an almond.
Hate to break that to you guys.
This is goat's milk, mare's milk. Like in Nepal, they drink tons of
In
mare's milk.
Mongolia, tons of fermented
Mongolia.
mare's milk. Oh.
Sheep milk. What else is there?
But it has to be natural. It can't like be dead. It can't be chemicalized.
Yes, it should also be grass-fed, because here's the magic thing. What happens is when a cow or sheep or a goat eats grass, it actually converts it into one of the things it does, among many other things, it converts it into a vitamin called K2 that our bodies absolutely need in order to synthesize everything that's going on in our body. Well, guess what? The only place you can get that is from an animal who has eaten grass.
Nice.
And then they convert it to K2 and you get it from their meat. And I can't remember if you get it from their milk, but yeah, I think it's in the butter too. So yeah, but that's where you get K2. You can't get it in there's no plants you can get K2 from. So that's fascinating. Okay,
elk and deer in the freezer getting more
awesome.
next week.
I feel like we're totally geeking out on this right now when there's a lot of other things.
Yeah, there's too much emphasis on this. But so healthy sources, get natural sources.
So I'm sorry, I just want to finish answering this question. I really do geek out about this too much. So the meat, the milk, the butter, because we talked about the fats, your body needs fats. Now, another good source of healthy fats is coconut oil.
So the vegans are just,
I know, I'm sorry.
They're just not happy with what we're saying right now.
And I understand that because I literally went through that journey and I went through that period. But over time, I have just I just cannot deny what I have learned. And that's that this is how we evolved. This is how humans became humans. This is what we have been eating for thousands of years, if not longer. I just can't deny that that's what it is. And so I'm now becoming an advocate for that of like, you need to eat meat and you need to eat milk and you need to eat butter. Then the other thing is fruit. You can't go wrong with fruit. Fruit is meant to be eaten. It's meant to be consumed. And so that's a great source of carbohydrates and natural sugars. So that's a good thing. I think that's a good start.
There's so much.
We could go on more about what is actually fuel, but I think that's a good foundation.
So I think the big thing is, and this is a place where you could get results immediately, is just by cutting out junk food and fast food and a lot of chemicals. So just start looking at your labels. If the food you're eating is highly processed, it's likely to trigger things. And you could get online and there's great books we can recommend. You'll find so many studies they went through and they're like, man, the first thing they do, if they're really good, somebody comes in with real like depression, anxiety. They're like, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna just drop your diet
completely. Diet.
We're gonna do an elimination diet, like cut off everything. Woo! And then they start like, okay, we're just gonna start with rice. Okay, any reaction? No, feel good. Now chicken. All right, everything good. Wow, that's great. Now we're gonna do this vegetable. and this fruit, anything. And they did this with this one gentleman. He was suicidal, and he had murder ideation. He was just dark
Very
stuff.
dark.
They cut him off, and he's like, he went to this doctor as his last straw. He'd been to tons of therapists, nothing helped, all this stuff. This was the last straw before it was just all over. They took him off everything. And he's like, I've never felt this good like for decades. This is incredible. And so they go one at a time, introducing food. He's like, I feel great. I feel great. I feel great. Now for this gentleman in particular, it was corn. As soon as he had something that had corn in it, boom, it came right back. The darkness came flooding. It was terrible. And he's like, for some reason, this man's body reacts negatively, has this chemical thing to corn, and brings in just a whole flood. And so they're like, hey, no corn forever again. Just like no corn product at all. And that was for him. It's huge. For others, I've done this was years and years ago. I saw this where they found these kids that food coloring would set off horrible behavior problems in children. And so as long as this kid didn't get any food coloring, like he was an angel. But food coloring goes in his system, and he is just a wild terror. So anyways, way too long on that one. And yeah, she's at 11 workshop on healthy meals.
That
would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
That'd be great. We should do something like that.
Yeah,
okay, so that's just food.
fun.
So watch what you're eating. You have to be careful what you're eating. So the next, let's go to our psychology. Actually, no, move your body. You have to move your body. They found the exercise, and we talked about this in the podcast.
So this is where you should share that research on the exercise.
So they took two groups, and they wanted to test, we'll put this group on antidepressants, and we'll have this group, again, the whole group, both groups have the same problem of depression. We'll put one on antidepressants, one on exercise routine. We'll see how it shows. And initially it showed that exercise for a short time, exercise performed better. Right?
Slightly better than exercise, the antidepressants.
So here's the result of the antidepressant. Here's the result of exercise, and it performs slightly better. That's fantastic. Like no medication, no nothing, just exercising had more positive results, but that was just for a short time.
And some people might say, oh, I'd rather take the drug because I don't have to exercise. It's slightly better.
That's adding to the problem.
But I'm just saying, you might think that.
So then over time, they found that if you go into long-term, exercise performed way better.
It produced
far better results.
Far better results.
So, and a regular exercise routine, and you're like, this is all common sense, but it's not common practice. Eat healthy food and exercise regularly. Yeah, I think we all know that, right? But are we doing it?
Well, and sometimes what happens is we question it. We don't know because we live in our little circle of life. And unless we specifically know someone who has done that, it's easy to question and doubt it. And when we question and doubt something, then we're less likely to do it. So it's great that we now have scientific research saying, yes, we studied it. And yes, it's actually proven that exercising is more effective for treating depression than taking an antidepressant. And so that helps a lot because we know now it's not, oh, well, I heard it for this one person, it's not based on that. It's like, oh, I know there's actually research on this. This is true. So that gives us a lot of confidence to be able to say, I know this is true. I can actually do it. So it does matter, I think, to know that something will work.
Yep. And then we start doing it and practicing it yourself. And again, longevity brings power because it's a compounding effect. Man, it starts to change everything. So just a simple question and evaluation right now. Do you exercise regularly?
Or at least move your body. Getting outside, walking, getting in nature, swimming, dancing.
Yes, move your body. But they found that the more vigorously you move, the better.
Start somewhere.
Oh man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Laura's saying, man, a whole class on how to get from knowing to doing would be awesome.
Yeah.
I asked my sister that
just the other day, why can't I do
what I know? Yep, exactly. That's the whole thing for all of us, right? That's the whole system.
We should do something on that.
Yep, I'll make a note of it because we're just, we could go off right now on that. We shouldn't.
We should not.
Okay, I'll make a note. The next thing is sleep. Talk about sleep, babe.
Okay. So, the recovery that our brains get while we are sleeping plays a huge part in, well, again, this whole chemistry. Our body's a pharmacy, right? We're producing chemicals. We are chemists. And when our body sleeps, then that is when our brain is recovering. It's synthesizing information. It is, all the other more important words about this because you just interviewed a guy for your podcast.
He's a breathing and sleep specialist. I'm going to be publishing that soon. It is
for the Be the Man podcast.
Amazing, off the charts. Like the things that happen to heal our bodies while we're sleeping is the biggest miracle ever. But if we have poor sleep habits, it's not happening.
Well, and specifically REM sleep, right?
Yep.
That when you're getting REM sleep.
Deep REM sleep.
And the other fascinating thing that he said when you interviewed him, that you told me he said, was that something about smoking. Like if you smoke, it can cut how much time off your life? It was like 1 to 3 years or something.
Yeah.
So smoking can cut 1 to 3 years off of your life. But if you don't sleep well, if your sleep is constantly interrupted, it cuts, what was it?
5 to 15 years.
5 to 15 years off of your life. That is how important sleep is. That's huge. Besides the fact that it's contributing to how you feel on a daily basis. If you're not getting good recovery sleep, that's directly affecting the chemicals in your body,
mood,
the biochemistry,
behavior, mindset, paradigm, the whole lens through what you're saying. All you have to do is get on this kind of chronic sleep deprivation, and all of this stuff we're talking about just starts dropping. It's incredible. And so again, back to, well, we know this already. We're not sharing anything that's earth-shattering here. But look what we've just touched on already. You guys with us? You eat some garbage food pretty regularly. You don't work out as much as you should or could, and then you're not sleeping well because you're staying up late on your phone scrolling, and then you get up with the kids.
Not to mention the effects that social media can have.
Yes, on the psychology. But let's just hit those three things. If you're doing those three things, right? You guys with us on this? Like, that's gonna cause some serious problems right there. And so it's simple fixes, man. Like, I don't know. When we talk about this stuff, I get so excited because it's so simple to make some changes.
Not to mention, we read some other research talking about how if you, I can't even remember exactly, but it was something like if you stay up late, well, it was talking about it specifically for children, that when a child stays up late, if they get 1 hour less of the amount of sleep they're supposed to get, so say like a child's supposed to get 9 to 10 hours, say for a teenager or something. And if they get 1 hour less than that, it actually lowers their cognitive ability by 1 grade level. So if they get 2 hours less, it's like lowering their cognitive ability by like 2 grade levels. Now, this is significant. So they were talking about how this can affect school performance, right? Because if your kids stay up late, they have to get up early for school. If the kids go to school, then the amount of hours they're sleeping is literally lowering their cognitive ability for functioning at school. And
their mood and outlook on life.
Exactly. Besides that.
Isn't this incredible?
But it's also for adults, they were comparing it to like being inebriated. That it also has the similar effect as far as decision making goes, not necessarily like you're walking around drunk, but decision making capabilities are reduced with a lack of sleep. So like, you should never make decisions when you are
on sleep deprivation.
Tired, on sleep deprivation, because it's literally lowering your cognitive ability to decide, which if we're talking about depression and anxiety, then just begins to cycle, because when you're tired and you make poor decisions that produce poor results, which produces poor feelings. And then it's just this downward spiral of negativity because of poor decisions and poor thinking, and down it goes.
So if we just paused right there, again, I keep saying how much I love this and get excited about it. If we pause right there with that, just a super simple equation, it's very, very normal for all of us to feel anxious sometimes. And it's very normal to feel depressed sometimes. But that does not mean we have depression or anxiety, that we have to take it on as identity that something wrong with us. What we need to do is pause and say, what is off? What this is a symptom or a consequence of something. What is it? And if we didn't say anything else, if we ended right now, you'd stop and say, man, I'm feeling anxious today, or I'm feeling depressed, or I just feel off, feel negative or dark or discouraged. How well have you been sleeping the last week? How well have you been eating? You just a clean diet. How well have you been doing and getting enough, right? Some of you, like, you get so busy you don't eat. And so you're running on deprivation. Some of you eat too much. And so the body's like, just down and slow. It's because we're eating too much. And then moving your body. Your body's like a dynamo. And the more we move it, the more it activates, right? So literally you start moving and your heart starts pumping faster and you get more oxygenated blood, because when you move fast, you have to breathe more and your heart rate goes up. And what does that do? It pumps oxygenated blood to your brain first, which is most important, and through your whole body. Well, guess what happens? You feel better. Like it turns on the energy. Like, oh, if you need more energy, if you need to feel better, if your brain needs to be lit up, you don't do less, you do more. So some of us are slouched over. We have really poor posture, or we just have a slouched life, right? We're just slouchy. We're shallow breathing. So heads down, shoulders are forward, shallow breathing. So we're not getting much oxygenated blood to the brain. And so the brain's like, oh no, what's going on? What's going on? And then we're eating chemicals and junk food and processed food and sugar and soda and garbage. And we're not exercising, and we haven't been sleeping well because we've just been, I don't feel well, and scrolling. And then we have kids that wake us up, right? You see what I just did? I literally just wrote a recipe for psychological and emotional struggle. Isn't that simple? And yet profound? Are you guys catching this? Can you hear the words that are coming out of our mouth? Like, this stuff is awesome.
I want to emphasize one other thing, because I know for me it made a difference. I used to think, oh, I'm feeling down, or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling worried because X, Y, and Z is happening in my life. This is happening, and this is happening, and this has gone wrong, and this, no wonder I would feel like that, right? But then I started to look at it a little differently. And I started to say, oh, wait, no, I think I'm feeling off because I haven't moved my body today, or I haven't gotten the right foods, or I haven't done this. I've started to look at those things first, as opposed to the external things that are causing my pain. Because yeah, those things happen. But when we start to look at what have I done or not done to contribute to the biochemistry of my body, then I realize that that's having more of an effect on me than the other things.
Address the easy changes first.
Easy. They don't always feel easy. Sometimes that feels a lot harder. Sometimes we'd rather just complain that, wow, Airbnb took my money, or the weather is cloudy every day. We'd rather blame those things. We'd rather have those as the reasons for why we feel the way that we do, instead of, oh, I should have gone running today, or I should have got outside, or I should have drank a glass of water this first thing this morning, or I should have not stayed up till midnight scrolling on Instagram, right? We don't want to blame. We don't want to have our, like, going back to the individual responsibility. We don't want it to be our fault. But when we start looking at, oh, what did I do or what did I not do or what have I done that's contributing to the way I feel, because my body's a pharmacy and the chemicals I'm producing are causing me to feel in certain ways, how can I change those chemicals? How can I switch them around? What did I do to make it that way? And how can I switch that? That's where I've started to look, and that's huge. That's a game changer.
And the good news is there's things you can do right away. When you start feeling that way, you can stop and just do some quick exercise. Isn't that so cool? Like you're like, you know what? Hey, I'm just gonna do a quick, just turn on a song and just move your body vigorously for the length of the song. It could be a 3-minute song, and you just say, okay, when I hit go, I can't stop moving. And so you just, you run in place, jumping jacks, dance around, whatever, air squats, sit-ups, push-ups, tricep dips, whatever. You do that for 3, you're gonna be like, wowzers, okay, like the blood's pumping, this is amazing. And then go get a big glass of water, because most people are chronically dehydrated, and that's of course affecting our brains and our cellular level. And then get something healthy to eat, give a bite of healthy food, and then take a nap. If you're dragging, take a nap. Just stop, take a nap. A short one. It can't be like you sleep all afternoon, because then you won't sleep the next night. Take a short nap. Make sure you do something like, and talk to your people, talk to your kids, talk to your spouse. Be like, hey, look, I really need to sleep tonight. I gotta sleep well. Or I gotta grab a quick nap. I gotta get some recovery. And those are simple things. It's kind of like the whole idea of the low-hanging fruit. It's low-hanging fruit to start feeling better right away. Man, this stuff is awesome. And again, we've already gone like over time with just talking about these elements.
Yes.
There's so much more.
They're
But
the basics.
You want to hit these?
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things. When we first got married, we heard so many people say, don't go to bed angry. We learned soon that one of the best things we could do was to go to sleep. If we felt angry in the morning, everything seems better. I think that's true, that you're changing your state and you are allowing some of those emotions to dissipate. And that's a good thing. Sometimes
we're
that doesn't work. Sometimes I will,
because we're tired.
Yes, that's definitely plays a part.
If I ever get in a lull, which is rare, it's usually, and you know this, it's just every once in a while I'm like, hey babe, I'm going to bed. And I just go and I just crawl into bed. I'm like, I'm out. Next morning I'm like, woo, let's go. Right? Because if I'm just worn down, I'm just like, babe, I'm going to bed.
Right.
Love you, love the kids, love you guys. I'm out.
Yeah.
Because I gotta reset.
I would say, I think that needs to be a mutual thing, because if one of you is like, I'm going to bed, and the other one's like, I'm not done talking, that could be a problem. I know I have to at least calm down a bit to be able to go to bed, or otherwise my sleep is restless. So that's just.
Ooh, this next one's so important.
My 13-year-old daughter is seeing a lot of self-diagnosing and labeling among classmates.
Yes, such a huge problem.
So we've been able to talk about how these feelings are normal for all humans, but not staying in them. Yes. Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
And that's definitely one of the takeaways we want to have on this topic of overcoming anxiety and depression. Feeling anxiety and depression are normal. Every single human being feels that. Having it as your identity is a whole nother thing. And that's one of the things, and that's one of the key ingredients to this as well, that we didn't even touch on yet. But which I do think we talked about in the podcast. So that's good. If you want to listen to the podcast episode about this, I think we emphasize this, that when you have this as part of your identity, that's one of the challenges you have in overcoming it. If you say, I am depressed, I am statements are very powerful. And your brain will go to work, and your subconscious mind will go to work to prove that that is true. If you believe something like, I am this thing, your brain wants to live in congruence, and so it will try to make that true for you, so that you act out what you believe you are. So that's another piece to this, of not taking it on as a identity. It's fine to say, oh, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling depressed right now, but not to say I am depressed, because you're not. You're a human being. You're not depressed.
Beautiful. Okay. Love it. I think we're gonna wrap up there for today. So let's just look at those elements. We can dive deeper into psychology. Maybe we'll do that next time, and just hit the whole psychology piece of it, the other elements.
And talking about going from knowing to doing. Yeah. There's a lot of things. And we should do a workshop. Maybe we should do a
Yes.
whole workshop in the kitchen.
That would be
Cooking.
awesome. But just with what we've given you, I promise all of us can make some significant positive improvements with I think pretty dramatic positive results just in eating, the quality of the food we're eating, regular and consistent exercise, moving our bodies and getting outside, and sunlight. You've got to get sunlight. Some of you get less sunlight than a prisoner in solitary confinement, man. Get outside. So
Well,
that one, and then
I know we're over. I just want to add another thing,
Sleep.
because another thing we do first thing in the morning, this is our morning routine really fast. We get up, drink a glass of water because your body's dehydrated. I have tea with butter in it, and we both go outside and look at the sun. Every day we do that. So just want to add that.
because it gets you going. There's so many natural things. And you guys, so much of this common sense, but I'm asking you, is it common practice for you and your family? If it is, great. How can you improve it? How can you
And
refine
what's
it?
the next
And then,
level?
yeah, the next level for you. And then next time we can dive into even the more psychology stuff, because the whole structure we just talked about for the body, the same is true for the mind and the spirit. So it's body, mind, and spirit. And so the same is true for that. We have to be that strategic about nourishing the mind and exercising the mind and having great mental habits and patterns and all that good stuff. So there's so much here, but work on this one, take it back to your families, just really do a good, honest analysis, take ownership of it. How are you doing on sleep, food, and moving your body? And just those things, even if you're doing well. And if we ratchet that up, the more we refine and improve that, the more it changes the outcomes in our lives. Booyah! Okay, love you guys. Have an absolutely fantastic week and reach upward.